Good morning, and welcome to the Union Army. Today you'll receive a basic training in American Civil War history. We'll talk about the causes of the American Civil War and the personal motivations of soldiers who decided to enlist in the war. We'll also look over your new uniform and explain to you your equipment you'll be wearing every day. Finally, we'll talk about the expectations of battle, especially among soldiers who had never seen a battle before, and we'll compare that with their experiences during the first Battle of Bull Run. I'm glad you'll be joining us. Take two. Hello there. My name's Jeff Alfordjost, but you can call me Mr. O. I'm a 2nd through 5th grade social studies teacher at Dorchester Elementary School in Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey. Formerly, I taught 5th and 6th grade social studies in School 7 in Paterson, New Jersey, and I'm a Civil War reenactor. I'd like to start by making a shout out to my current and former students. I hope that you are happy and healthy at home during this unique situation that we're all living through. I love studying history. History gets me so excited. I think that through studying history, we can understand better who we are and why we do what we do. Most of what we do can be related back to our personal history, family history, regional history, country history, or cultural history. And so I feel like it's the key to understanding so much of our world. I'm so excited that you get to come along with me on this journey as we learn about the beginning of the American Civil War. Today, while we're learning our lessons, we're also going to be creating posters, recruitment posters. A recruitment poster was made to advertise when a new group of soldiers called a regiment was being formed, and to persuade people to join that regiment. So as we go through our different mini lessons today, we'll stop from time to time and add on to our poster. And eventually we'll have a picture on there, maybe a flag, some headings, and this will be the way that you can show what you've learned today in class. Don't worry if you're not the greatest artist. This is just based on effort. As you can see, I'm not the greatest artist either. This is just a way of using the information that we've learned today and putting it into a fun little way just to make something out of it. So, to do this, we're going to need some simple materials. You'll need some type of paper. You'll need some pencils. And if you have anything to color with, at the very end we'll be coloring in. I'll give you 2 minutes time during which you can get those supplies. The Civil War is an extremely important era in the history of the United States, and it takes place between 1861 and 1865. Now that's over 150 years ago. The Civil War is so tragic in United States history because it's not a war where we're fighting against another power or fighting against another country. The Civil War is a war where U.S. citizens are fighting against other U.S. citizens. And that's one of the big tragedies about this war. The war is based primarily on slavery. That's what it's mostly fought over. I was about to say for years, but really for the entire history of the United States, it's grappled with the question of slavery, whether to keep it, whether to abolish it, and it's been a back and forth between, it turns into the northern states, who generally want to abolish or slow the progress of slavery, and the southern states. On December 24th, 1860, South Carolina decides to secede from the United States. To secede means to leave the United States, to form their own country. They're upset, they're taking their ball, and they're going home. They don't want a part of the United States anymore. They're followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Soon to follow them will also be Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee. One of the catalysts driving them away is the election of President Abraham Lincoln. The South believes will be another force for the abolition of slavery. And so, in 1861, 11 states have tried to leave the United States and to form their own country, called the Confederate States of America. During the Civil War, there's two main war aims of the North. One is to abolish slavery. The other one is to preserve the United States, they would say preserve the Union, to keep it together. That states just can't go off and form their own country just because they don't like how voting turns out. Okay, here's the first part of our assignment. Using your pencil, you're going to write across the top of the paper one of the two main reasons that the Civil War happened. You can either choosing end slavery or keep the United States together. And you could put it into your own words. You could write end slavery now, abolish slavery. You could write preserve the Union or the Union forever. Whatever you'd like, you can put it into your own words. But choose one of those two main national causes for the Civil War. The fighting war doesn't start right away, not until April of 1861. At first, they're trying to find peaceful ways to bring this together, while still raising some troops to make sure that the rebellion doesn't spread and possibly to put down the rebellion. In April of 1861, Confederate soldiers fire on Fort Sumter, a fort that has U.S. soldiers in it. And from then on, it's a real war. President Lincoln is going to have to recruit more troops in, to fill up the army to go and fight the South. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever needed to convince someone to do something? To convince or to persuade them to do something? What are some different ways that you could win someone over? Think it over for a couple seconds. Now, when the war starts, there's a lot of reasons that people sign up for the war, and they don't all have to do with just ending slavery or just keeping the United States together. There's a lot of reasons people sign up. We're going to call these personal motivations. Not the cause for the country for the war, but a personal reason why a soldier signs up. And there's a lot of them, and some of them might surprise you. Some are going to sign up for patriotism, sure. Some are going to sign up because of that excitement and maybe that rage that the South has attacked them. So they get excited and they got a little bit of rage and they go sign up. Some might sign up out of fear. There's a lot of recruiting posters that say, Washington is at risk, sign up now. They might sign up for money, to get paid. They might sign up for the camaraderie of it. They might sign up for peer pressure. Does peer pressure get us to do stuff sometimes? Yeah, might not be the best thing, but yeah, peer pressure might be a reason why people would sign up. You don't want to be the only one left behind. And there's posters that say something like that. Also, they might sign up for camaraderie. When we look at posters of the time period, now these are called primary sources. A primary source is information that comes from that time period. And when we look at recruiting posters, we can find different ways that people tried to get you into the Army. It might be the adventure of a picture of a cavalryman riding along into the distance. And you say, man, I really want to be on that on the horse. I want to be a part of the cavalry. It might be just the adventure of going off and seeing a new place. A lot of the people hadn't traveled very far from their homes at this time period. So maybe it's just the idea that you can go somewhere you've never been before. It could be something like fancy uniforms. It could be regiments that embrace your cultural heritage. There's Irish regiments, German regiments, Italian regiments like the Garibaldi Guard, Scottish regiments like the 79th New York. And those are regiments where people can not only sign up, but also enjoy their heritage with other people that share their heritage as well. So there's a lot of reasons why people sign up. And it's not all because of the fundamental reasons of the country. There's other reasons as well. Well, we've done a lot of learning already. So let's take a short break where we'll enjoy a read aloud together, which is connected to what we're learning about. This book is called Bull Run, and it's by an author named Paul Fleischman. This book is titled Bull Run because it has to do with the first major battle of the American Civil War, the first battle of Bull Run. And this is the first battle that many soldiers would have been in. What's really exciting about this book for me is that it has a number of different characters. They're all historical fiction, and they're written in first person, like monologues, or if they're writing in their diaries. And you get to read what they have to say before the battle, and then you get to read their experiences during the battle, and sometimes their experiences after the battle. Now, some of the ones that I'm going to read to you, I've had to cut a little bit for time just to make it fit into the video. But I'm really excited to share some of these. And as we read them, first we'll just read the experiences before. And let's focus on some things. Why are these people signing up to enlist in the Army? And how do they feel about being in the military? Now, keep in mind, the things we're reading right now, they haven't been through a battle yet. So it'll be interesting to see how they feel. Maybe some of their motivation will sync up with the motivation we talked about, why people signed up for the war. Maybe it will. Let's see. This is the story of Dietrich Hertz, a Union soldier. Part 1. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't feel myself a foreigner. Nearly all the regiment was German. Visitors were surprised to hear our commands shouted out in German. None, though, could doubt our love for the Union. It had given us all new life. From New York, the boxes soon began coming, Jams, pickles, books, writing paper, thread, and 100 other useful things were sent by the Soldiers' Aid Society. We soon discovered that each held a note. One read, "Be brave, defeat the rebel traitors." Others encouraged us to remain hopeful and healthy. All were encouraging and cherished. Wow, that was a good read, wasn't it? I wonder, as we read through it, did you catch any of the reasons we talk about for personal motivation in these pages? Let's review what we saw. Dietrich Hertz writes that for the first time in 4 years he didn't feel like a foreigner. Nearly all the regiment was German. Does that check one of our boxes on personal motivation? Yeah, a lot of the regiments were made to try to get people in of a certain heritage. That was a draw. He goes to a German regiment because he's German. For the first time in 4 years, he doesn't feel like he's in this brand new country and doesn't know his way around because he's surrounded by people that share his heritage. If I were signing up, I'd be signing up with the 79th New York, the Highlanders, the Scottish regiment. He also writes about the excitement of it. From New York, boxes come in with jam and pickles and books and writing paper. And there's notes that say, "Be brave, defeat the rebel traitors." And they urge him to be hopeful and healthy. And so we can see the excitement of it. People signing up here, most of them had never been in a battle, and they are excited about the experience, maybe not of being in the battle, maybe at least they realize that that's not going to be too good, but some of them are excited about it. But even just being in the military, this is a huge adventure for a lot of people. Let's see. A.B. Tilbury. Let's see what he had to say. This is the story of A.B. Tilbury, Part 1. By gravy, it was a glorious feeling. At last we were off to battle. The regimental bands all blared. Flags fluttered. We could no more keep from singing than from breathing. We filled the air with Yankee Doodle and Rally Round the Flag, boys. I'd come from Maine, joined up as a cannoneer, and hadn't been south of the Kennebec River. I'd never known a Southerner either, but I'd read enough to know that they were cruel-hearted, war-loving villains, and that peaceable citizens like myself would have to take up the gun against them. Starts right off the first sentence. By gravy, it was a glorious feeling. At last we were off to battle. Okay, remember before when I said some of them probably knew battle wasn't a good thing? He's excited for battle. He's excited to get into it, right? The regimental bands blared and there's flags fluttering. They're singing Yankee Doodle and Rally Round the Flags. So far I've got excitement being, patriotism when they're singing Yankee Doodle and rallying around the flags. Now here's another thing. I like this part. He said he's from Maine, but he'd never been south of the Kennebec River. He hasn't traveled far from home. He hadn't even met a Southerner before. For a lot of people of this time period, the war was a chance for adventure and for travel as well. This was an age before social media, before TV. So if you lived in Maine, most of your time was spent in Maine, and most of what you knew about was in Maine. So there's a chance for adventure right there. Finally, he ends up by saying that he's read a lot, that the Southerners are cruel, vicious, violent people. I wonder how that's going to play out while he's in the battle. And then finally, the last one I've got for you is James Dixie. Here's an interesting case. He goes to draw pictures of the soldiers fighting. Now, photographs were around, but they couldn't take pictures of things that were moving fast at the time. So newspapers still hired people to draw pictures of what was going on, and James Dixie is one of these people who's drawing pictures of what's going on. Newspapers during the Civil War would hire artists to draw pictures of the battles that they would put in their newspapers. James Dixie is an artist. Part 1. How I longed to render my drawings in color, to show the emerald green flags of the Irish Brigade and the tricolored standards of New York's French regiment, not to mention the companies of immigrant Germans, Scotch, and Poles, each with their own vivid uniforms. I saw troops led through the most difficult drills, perfectly synchronized, flawlessly executed, their rifles spinning at times like wheel spokes. It was a stunning display. I made several sketches and left sure that no army could best the Union. He talks about here the emerald green flags of the Irish Brigade, the tricolored standard of the New York French regiments, and there were companies with immigrants, the Germans, the Scots and the Poles, all with vivid uniforms. He's getting in on the excitement here, right? Here's another person who's excited about this. Now he also ticks off another box. He's there for money as well. He's not necessarily getting paid by the army, but he is getting paid by the newspaper. This is a job for him. There's another one of our personal motivations. And listen to this. He says that they spin their rifles, they know their drills, and he's sure that there's no army that can beat the Union Army. It's pretty enthusiastic and pretty confident. I'll be interested to see how this turns out. We'll read this a little bit more later on, after we've had some more time to learn about what life was like in the Army, your equipment, and a little bit more about the beginnings of the Civil War. We've talked about the personal motivation of soldiers that signed up for the American Civil War. Some of those reasons would have been for adventure, for pay, camaraderie, fancy uniforms. There's a lot of different reasons. We're going to choose one of those reasons, and underneath the main reason, we're going to write it on the piece of paper. Again, you can put this in your own words. I'll need you to sign here and initial right over here. And what army branch would you like to fight for? And what regiment do you want to enlist in? All right, so through talking about the causes and the personal motivation, have I convinced you to join the Union Army yet? I hope so. When joining the Union Army, you have some decisions to make. First, you're going to have to figure out what type of soldier you want to be. Now, there were a lot of soldiers in the Union Army and a lot of different types of soldiers, but we'll study on the three main ones that we're going to talk about today. First one we're going to talk about is the infantry. The infantry are foot soldiers. There's more infantry in the Army than any other branch. They are the basis of the Army. They are the mainstay of the Army. Now, it's a hard life. You could be marching 20 miles a day, more if there's an emergency. And when you're sleeping in your tents on the cold ground. But the infantry is the backbone of the Army. Maybe that's not your style. Maybe not the infantry? Can I interest you in the artillery? You could fire the big cannons. You could fire the big guns. You might end up in a fort if you're in the artillery, or you might end up on the battlefield if you're in the artillery. It's an exciting position to be in the Army. I still haven't swayed you yet? Okay, the cavalry. Here's the secret. The cavalry was the exciting one. The cavalry had the glamour. You're riding on a horseback. Why trudge through the mud as a foot soldier in the infantry? Why do you want to drag a cannon around? Ride on a horse and be in the cavalry. They have the best uniforms. Maybe not, who knows, but they have great uniforms. They have their sabers. When people thought of like knights and stuff in the Middle Ages, they thought then of the Civil War cavalry. That was the exciting branch to join, and a lot of people wanted to be in the cavalry. So you can be in the infantry, the artillery, or the cavalry. But don't go yet. There's something else we have to talk about. Regiments. A regiment is a group of soldiers. Regiments didn't usually come from the national government, although there were U.S. regiments. Regiments usually came from the states, and so they would be named after the state. So, for example, you might be in the 1st New Jersey Infantry. It's an infantry regiment. It's from New Jersey. And if it's called the 1st, it's because it is the first of the infantry regiments New Jersey made. The 1st New Jersey was around since before the American Revolution. You might be in the 4th New Jersey Artillery. There's again the number. It would have been the 4th Artillery Regiment made. New Jersey, because you're from New Jersey, and the artillery. Or you could be in the 3rd New Jersey Cavalry, a very famous cavalry regiment, and this one had fancy uniforms to try to entice you into being in the cavalry. So you have some decisions to make for your posters, and I'm going to let you get to work on that for a second. But make this your own. This is going to be your poster, and you get to decide all the rest. All right, step number 3. I want to leave some space in the middle so I can do some drawings in there. But I also want to decide what type of soldier I'm going to be and what my regiment is going to be. So you can choose between infantry, which are foot soldiers, cavalry, which are horse soldiers, or artillery, which fire the big guns, and the regiment would just be any number you choose, New Jersey, and whatever branch that you chose. So for example, 3rd New Jersey Cavalry. Instead of just writing, I choose cavalry, try to find a creative way to do it. Maybe you would write, gallop into glory in the cavalry. Something exciting like that. Remember, these are meant to persuade. You're trying to convince someone that your regiment is the regiment to join. out your forage cap, your belt, your jacket, your pants, and your shoes, you can head over to the quartermaster and he'll outfit you with the rest of your equipment you'll be needing. Welcome to the regiment. Here's a uniform you'll be wearing. Dark blue wool coat, light blue pants, shoes. Rough sizing, they won't be comfortable. Most of the equipment you'll be using is going to be on your belt. And on your belt here, we have your bayonet, cap pouch, and cartridge box. The cap pouch and cartridge box hold your ammunition. Keep them dry on a wet day. This bag over here is called the haversack. It's canvas and it's painted to make it somewhat waterproof. This is going to hold your food and your plate and your fork and knife, anything you need for preparing food. And finally, one of the most important pieces of equipment, your canteen. Keep it full and stay hydrated. Now let's take a look at the back of the uniform. From here, you'll be able to see some of the other equipment you'll be using. You'll be issued a backpack. Again, canvas, painted over to give it some waterproofness. On here, you'll be able to roll on your blanket, your tent, your ground cloth, and possibly a greatcoat, which would be a big overcoat. Down here, we get a better view at the haversack. Again, this is where you're keeping all your food. And finally, over here, the cartridge box, where you keep your ammunition. Let's get suited up. We've just learned about uniforms during the American Civil War. In the beginning of the Civil War, uniforms were varied, and we had talked a little bit about that. Uniforms were altered to fit whatever the choices of the regiment. For this, I'm going to say let's stick to a blue coat, even though some regiments didn't have blue coats. Let's make sure that we have the blue coat. But other than that, you can vary it however you want to. Traditionally, as you saw when I was wearing the uniform, it would be a blue coat and light blue pants. But you can change it to suit your needs. For me, since mine is going to be a Highland regiment, I'm going to have tartan pants, which means plaid pants, to go along with my culture. But find some way to make these uniforms dressed up. So again, someone will choose your regiment over someone else's. Now, take this one easy. Do the best you can. We're not all artists here, and when you see mine, you're going to realize I'm not an artist either. This is about learning, and this is about making decisions what to put into the poster. So it's okay if you don't turn out the best drawing. Right now, what we're working on is learning about the American Civil War.
I'll file this away. Welcome to the Union Army.
I'd like you to think about something for me for a minute. Think about a time when your experiences were different from what you expected. We all have expectations, and sometimes they're not the same as your experiences. It might be good, and it might be bad. Perhaps a trusted adult says, hey, you should try this vegetable, it's really good. And you think it's going to be awful, and it turns out it's good. The first time I tried asparagus, I didn't think it was going to be good, but I loved it. Maybe the experience wasn't as good as what you were hoping. Maybe you're looking forward to that gift, and it turns out it sucks. Our experiences are a lot of times different from what we expect. So think about for a second a time that happened to you, and we'll connect that to our read aloud that we just had. Before we get into the book, I need to tell you a little bit about the first Battle of Bull Run. The first Battle of Bull Run was the first major battle during the American Civil War. But what I haven't told you yet is that the Confederates, the South, win the first Battle of Bull Run. Not only does the Union retreat, they're running away. It's a disorganized retreat, everyone just running for themselves. And for the characters in this book, I got to imagine that this is a really big surprise and a shock. I wonder how their experiences differed from what they expected from being in the army and being in the battle. First, let's check in with Dietrich Hertz. Now, you might remember, he's German. He came to the United States 4 years ago, and he's very excited to be in a German regiment. For the first time in 4 years, he doesn't feel like an outsider or a foreigner. He also was kind of caught up in the excitement of everyone's behind him and they're giving presents to the soldiers. But let's see what happens. The Story of Dietrich Hertz, Part 2. The Confederates must have been well warned. They met us with a volley of rifle fire, then artillery shells. The order was given to charge up the slope. I felt I was advancing into a dream. There were cries and explosions. The air stank of gunpowder. The men about me crouched and shot. I aimed at the smoke in the distance and fired. My thoughts flew back suddenly to Germany, to a toy gun I had as a child. This was nothing like I had thought. He's talking about getting fired at by guns and artillery shells. He has to charge up a slope, and it feels like he's in a dream. The air stinks of gunpowder, and he's crouching and firing into the smoke. And a battlefield at that time period is a very, very confusing place with smoke everywhere and everything. And then, this is really interesting, he thinks back to a toy gun he had as a child when he used to play war. And now he realizes it's nothing like he expected. Let's look at another one. Let's see what A.B. Tilbury has to say. Now, he was looking forward to the battle. He says, by gravy, it's a glorious feeling. At last we're going off to battle. He was excited. This was an adventure for him. The Story of A.B. Tilbury, Part 2. We sent 12-pound cannonballs at the Southerners. Then their artillery found our position and started to devil us in return. We'd fire, and they'd fire. I expect they crouched when they heard a shell coming, same as we did. I took to wondering whether their men were truly all savages, as I heard tell. A line of men marched towards us. There was no wind at all, so the flag hung limp. We couldn't make out whose side they were on, and held our fire. Then the air exploded with their gunfire. I was lucky, leaving me to run for my life. He's firing back and forth cannonballs during the battle. He shoots, the Southerners shoot back, but he starts thinking to himself, maybe the Southerners are a little bit more human or a little bit more like him. Before the battle, he was saying he'd never met a Southerner, but he knows that they're bloodthirsty and war-loving villains. But now, during the battle, he starts thinking maybe it's not as clear cut as that. At the very end, when they're shot at, he's lucky, but he ends up leaving and running for his life. The soldier who was saying he had a glorious feeling he couldn't wait for battle ends the battle by running as fast as he can in the other direction. That's quite a turn from what he was expecting, what he was hoping. Finally, let's look at James Dixie. Now, you might remember that he's a newspaper artist. He would be there to draw pictures of the battle to put into the newspaper. And he was talking about before the battle, the fancy uniforms and the stylized drill that they were doing, and he says no one's going to beat the Union Army.
The Story of James Dixie, Part 2. It takes but a pebble to start an avalanche. The sight of some of our soldiers fleeing infected all the others with fear. Regiments suddenly ceased to exist. A vast tide of men began streaming from the field, slowly at first, then in a mad flood. My eyes were disbelieving. My thoughts swirled. These weren't the same soldiers I'd sketched earlier. My notebook held heroes, marching in unison, bravely advancing, disdainful of death. I shouted, "Why do you run?" "Because I can't fly," a voice called back.
During the battle, he describes the U.S. soldiers running away like a pebble starting an avalanche. They're streaming from the field. And his thoughts are swirling in his mind, and he says, this isn't the army that I was drawing pictures of 2 days ago. He says that they had been disdainful of death. And he shouts to them, "Why are you running?" And one of the soldiers answers back, "Because I can't fly away." Well, the first battle of Bull Run was really difficult for these soldiers. A lot of them went in thinking they were going to win, and pretty much both sides believed that one major battle would end the Civil War. At the end of the first battle of Bull Run, it's very clear that that's not going to end the Civil War, and it is going to go on for a longer time. After a number of other battles also that are lost by the U.S. in the beginning of the war, it starts getting harder to get more people into the army, and they have to start offering bounties. In addition to a soldier's regular pay, which was about $13 a month on average, the U.S. government starts offering bounties. And what a bounty is that it's like a signing bonus if you know athletics. If you sign up for a team, and if you're an athlete they really want, they might offer you a signing bonus, money just for choosing them, in addition to the regular salary. That's what a bounty is. If you sign up for the Army, you get extra money right then and there, in addition to the money you'll make in the Army. And that's the last thing we're going to add on to our poster. After that, you'll have time to color in your posters, and I can't wait to see what you end up with. Last assignment before we finish this up, let's put in a bounty and the monthly pay. The monthly pay would have been usually about $13 a month. The bounty could be any amount of money, but we'll go somewhere between $50 to $200. This is your regiment, and you're the one who's making the poster, so you can decide what the bounty's going to be. Very good. Your poster is almost complete and you're doing a wonderful job. Now let's take some time to add in anything else you want. Stars and stripes, flags if you'd like to. Regiments would carry both a U.S. flag, and on the U.S. flag the stars could be designed however you want them, and a regimental flag, and you can design that also however you'd like it to be. Color in your soldier, finish up any of the writing that you want to, and make it look all nice so we get a real presentation style poster. I hope you had a fun time during the lesson today and that you learned something. Thank you so much for joining me as we talk about Civil War history. And if you enjoyed this, start reading about Civil War history. We just touched the surface of just a little part of the war. There's so much more you can learn.